It's with great pleasure that I have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Machelle Madison Thompson. As a trauma counselor for over 25 years, she is a research and teaching faculty member at Florida State University College of Social Work. She specializes in resilience-based intervention and measurement with underserved children, adolescents, and families experiencing trauma, poverty, and abuse. She has developed trauma resilience scales for children and adults in the US as a Fulbright scholar with Shanghai Children's Medical Center and children living in poverty in Hong Kong, and now with Spanish-speaking migrant children. Her team is actively creating an AI resilience app with Prometheus, I'm gonna butcher that, Machelle, I'm sorry, Prometheus R in Czechia, and UCF Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy and Team Firestorm and Brand XR in Orlando. During COVID, Dr. Madison Thompson released resilience briefs for children to help with safety and protective factor building. She is an International Academy on Violence Abuse board member and presents regularly on the implementation of protective factors following trauma for school, counseling, foster care, military, medical, and high-risk community settings. Thank you so much, Machelle. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So today, we're definitely talking about resilience. I'm going to talk about a little bit in terms of complex PTSD. We're going to talk about resilience in general, but the newer thing is complex PTSD. And one thing I wanted to talk about PTSD that's interesting is that with most other mental health diagnoses, you're looking at outliers on a normal curve. But post-traumatic stress is something that any of us pushed hard enough, whether that be in Ukraine, whether that be through COVID, we can all experience it. And so I see it a little bit differently than some of the other mental health issues. That's me. So here's my little version of bouncing forward, which I love what Stacy, how she uses that, because I created this before that term was coined, and I think it applies perfectly. That we're not looking for a kid who's the top in their class. We're hoping that they're going to get back to what they would have been had they not experienced that trauma. So their skills, their protective factors, their things, the friends that they love. That's what we're looking for, is that recovery. It's bouncing forward. So this is just kind of what it looks like across the lifespan. We've collected thousands of narratives, and we're going to share a new one with you today from APSAC. We've collected thousands of narratives where we've just asked, and think about this for yourself. When going through a hard time, what helps you the most? That's all we ask. And we've clustered it. And so what we've found is just to remember across the lifespan, it does tend to change a little bit, but it is different for every person. But kids, their problem solving tends to be more internal. Their family and caretakers, they look to as mentors and people who are caring for them. And their activities are their connection to the community. What we see as we get older is that our spiritual existential views, what is our meaning of life? What is our purpose here, especially practitioners like us? We're looking at what is our place in this world, and that's our connection to the biggest part of our world. Our family and our partners and our friends tend to take on equal roles as opposed to parent-child roles. And our active diversions, our inner strength and counseling tend to be things that we're doing for ourselves. Sometimes we're also doing them as part of the community, but not as much as kids. So this is just our definition. Resilience is seen when we're immersed in the positive influences across all those ecological systems, and they act together to offset trauma and risk factors, and they range across all the environmental influences. So how do we implement them? So let's talk about what they are at first. So you're going to get a few more from our practitioners, which we think is amazing, that we're actually creating resilience in ourselves in a way that we hadn't expected. I had the lovely opportunity of being able to speak at APSAC to the whole community. And we just asked as they went in with a QR code, hey, what helps you the most? And we as practitioners, those of you coming here today, learning how to do this, we have additional ways that we're helping ourselves to turn around and help others. These, however, the ones that we found are pretty consistent across cultures. Self-value, just remember, it's a little bit different from self-esteem. Self-esteem is me thinking I'm great. If I've just been through a traumatic event, watching a beating in my home, I'm not valuing myself so much. but I can take care. I mean, I'm not esteemed. I'm not thinking, oh, I'm great, but I can value myself enough to get up out of the bed, to keep going, to keep eating. Goals like that are sometimes where we start when we're working with someone who's been through severe trauma. Self-regulation is one of my favorite. We use it in our groups. We use it with kids. We talk about being up and down regulated. And if you're just feeling down, what can you do to help yourself feel a little bit better? Who do you call? What do you do? Do you go run down the block? If you need to down regulate, do you take a yoga class? So self-regulation is a two-part series where you're recognizing if you're kind of up or if you're kind of down. Like if I'm feeling down and depressed and I just didn't want to do this today. Not the case. I'm feeling excited and energized. And so I have to make sure that I don't get too excited. Hopeful future goal setting goes hand in hand. It's having hope for the future and then setting a goal to get there. So it includes that hope. And what we found is those combine together statistically. So it's setting any goal with a kid, with an adult that you can, to help them take that hope and turn it into a dream and then turn it into an actual, even if it's something very, very, very small. And what we do is we use the problem solving to help that person get to that goal. So you may say, okay, well, I just really want to be able to sleep better. And I'm sure you've had lots of people you've worked with following trauma that sleep is just rough. So what are some of the things you're going to do to get there? Is there, a special song you could listen to? That's the problem solving part. Is there a blanket you can use? Is there a specific time you can make sure you try to get to bed? Is there a wind down routine? So those are some of the things that we might put into that goal. Supportive belief structure is something that is very interesting, because if it's intrinsic, it's very, very protective. If it's forced on someone, it's not. And that makes a lot of sense. But we found that it just doesn't hold together when it's forced on someone. So if someone feels forced to be a certain type of a person, it's not going to be as protective as if they say in their heart, when I pray, I really do feel different. I feel like maybe somebody's up there listening to me. When I do that yoga or that meditation, I feel connected to the world. And I think that maybe it's not going to be quite as bad. Maybe when I'm out in nature and I look at the mountains, or I look at here in Florida at the beach, and I say, this is just stunning. We're part of something so big. So that supportive belief structure, you look for that peace that is the calmness and that mindfulness that we're trying to implement. Family and friends are really, really important. They're usually the top that we get, number 1 and 2, when we ask these questions. And it only takes one. Just remember that. If you're working with a family, a kid who I have 3 kids that came to live with me after their parents both passed away. That was a very disruptive space. So we helped them reach out to each other really well. We made sure that we brought them all into our home. We became their permanent guardians. We made sure, I try to make sure that I send them a text every time it's the anniversary of their dad's or their mom's death date. So it's bringing them back to, what did you learn from them? How can you be that legacy for them? So family can look a lot of different ways. Mine has a bunch of kids in it from different families, and we respect all of those heritages. Their friends, again, it only takes one. We found that sometimes that most popular kid is the one who's being like, people are clawing at that kid's status. And so they're actually feeling very lonely. You can also have a kid who doesn't seem to have any friends. And if they have one best friend, they're doing great. So it just takes one really close, kind friend. And that's something that you who are school social workers or associated with kids, really, really important to help them find that one person and maybe even adjust their schedules so that they can be part of that kid's life a little bit better. Academic support is not correlated with GPA. I like to tell people that. We don't know why, but we think we know why. And I always love to give Sarah Hembry a shout out. One of my kids who was actually affected the most by the death of her parents. They were all split up into different placements, and hers was not healthy. And so technically for a little while, they were homeless in our home. And so she was assistant principal. She got her name on the roll. She sat there and she goes, okay, I'm going to put you in as their temporary guardian. And until you get full guardianship, we're going to just put you down and we're going to help you as much as we can. I got so much support from the school. The music teachers, I had known the music teacher. I'd actually been in the same singing group that they were when I was young. And I knew her and I'd known her for years. And she goes, I got your back. We got this. And we worked together to make sure that they were okay. So that academic support brought those GPAs back up. And proud to announce that young lady just graduated from Florida State with an arts degree. Active diversion ties into that too, right? Because academics can be your active diversion, but just anything that makes you feel good. That being on a team, I have a daughter that plays worlds with Venezuelan team in ultimate frisbee. Who knew that that was even a thing? But every time she comes back from playing a game, she's just on cloud nine. Things are all well with the world, especially being part of the world that way. But it doesn't have to be big like that. It can be someone who sits and knits and it calms them. That I know someone who knits and the needles, that sound of the needles is just so like calming to them. So it can be anything, finding that for that person so that it's theirs and theirs alone. Supportive community, we know that across cultures that expands. In some cultures, that community can be a family member, a family, it can be maybe a church group. As you get to other cultures, it can be the entire nation. In China, when we were collecting data, some people said that it was the entire nation. In America, we tend to have a community that's a little bit smaller, but not true of all of our ethnicities. So ask, what is your supportive community? It might be that the kid's Catholic and they're part of this world religion. It may be that they're Islamic and that they find security in wearing hijab and abaya as they turn into a teenager. So it can be a lot of different communities and how you express that. And then again, helping that kid get out of the situation if it's really, really bad. Being that I know that some of you are DCF workers, I did that for a couple of years. I worked in a children's hospital for 12 years. And sometimes we just really had to work to get those kids out. So getting those stressors and finding that other family member that might be safer. So this is exciting stuff. This is what we asked, and thank you, APSAC, for letting us do this. We had a QR code, and we had over 500 people answer this. And we just asked our practitioners, so us, what helps us when we go through a hard time? And a lot of them are the same, but let's look at what's different. So you can see they're in a different order a little bit. As practitioners, we love our activities. I know I do. I sing at church and I just have to sing. If I don't sing, I'm not happy. If you looked at beyond that window right there, that door, I'm making costumes for the high school show right now. That's me. That's what I do. I have to have it. For some reason, making Beauty and the Beast look beautiful makes me feel great about the world. Supportive beliefs. So we've got a different order: self-regulation, community. We've got those friends, problem solving, self-value, career support. We need each other. We, as when you get to be my age and you're in your 50s, you're the one who's providing that support. Those of you who are here who are young, please come to us. That's why we give these webinars. We want you to feel safe and protected and to be the best next generation for these future kids and families that are going to need us get through their trauma. So we need to support each other, peer and then peer-to-peer mentors as well. So those ahead of us, those who mentor, and then our equals. Always, always, whatever it takes, being there for each other. Affirmations. I loved this. And the ones that came out were so cool. It's like we know that TFCBT and the cognitive behavioral therapies, we know they work. We're using them on ourselves. Isn't that amazing? So waking up in the morning and just saying, you know what, you got this today. I do that every day. I learned that from being a CBT therapist, a trauma therapist. Get up today, you got this. And I'll say it as I'm brushing my teeth, you got this. And I call myself by a childhood nickname, Shelly, instead of Machelle. You got this, Shelly. You're going to make it today. And I feel so much better. So we're doing that. Keep it up. Symbols of support, those symbols that we see when we see that we were able to give a presentation, attend a conference, when we were able to get a certification maybe. I'm working on forecast right now, and I'm almost through the training of being a forecast trainer. That symbol of my support and my academic support as we move forward, it's just really interesting, isn't it? So academics is really important to us, that we need to share what we know with each other. And that's why we're really glad to have you with us for this. Okay, I'm watching my time. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing most recently about that. I talked to you about how PTSD is just slightly different from other mental health issues. What complex PTSD is, and I know it doesn't really have a definition, it's not in the DSM. We have our own definition, and that's what we use. It's basically when someone's not responding to a traditional therapy or any medications. And to me, especially the medications tell me that we probably have something that's not a chemical depressive episode, but a depressive episode that's specifically related to trauma. And so we're going to address that a little bit differently. I'm not going to go over this very long, but what I want you to know about the brain is, and I always have to thank Bruce Perry because he's always giving us new information about neurology and trauma. And as soon as his articles come out, I'm like, okay, how are we going to use this? Let's try it out. But what we know is what's mostly involved is you've got your amygdala, your hippocampus, which kind of sorts stuff out and throw the energy back down into your adrenal glands so you can run and fight, flight, freeze, friend, all that if you need to. What's also really, this is the most important part right here, is your anterior cingulate cortex. And then this also is your superior temporal gyrus, this purple part. And that is why therapy and talking and supporting each other works, is because we form that hearing, that language, that connection we have with each other actually forms that social cognition, and therapy can be helpful with that. So let's go to the kid version of this. It's a lot more fun. So I have to give credit to my daughter who's in med school, 4th year, going to be a pediatrician and work in a hospital like I did, but I'm on the PhD side. So anyway, this is just how we tell it, that same stuff to kids, that these parts may, they may feel scared. It might help you survive, but they don't have to fix the problem. So what we do is we talk about this being that big sorting place in your brain, the anterior cingulate cortex. We don't say it for kids what it is. And we say, if you see something, we got to figure out, is it safe or is it not safe? Because sometimes I'm sure you know that with paired associations, you can have something that's completely irrelevant, a smell. A kid happened to have just been eating pancakes. I actually had this happen. A kid would, the parents were home on the weekend and they were eating pancakes. And so they ended up, the smell of pancakes was triggering. We're going to want to unpair that. But if they hear somebody say a dangerous threat, we don't want to unpair that. So we call it the great sort. So basically what happens is the paired associations might hurt or they might help us. So we're trying to figure out which one prevents further trauma and which ones keep those that are safe and needed as protective factors. What Bruce Perry taught us in one of his most recent articles is that we need mindfulness before cognition. So we need to get that kid, that person, that family breathing, praying, whatever it is that helps them be mindful, walking around in nature, sitting and listening to the beach or looking at the birds outside. Choose which associations alerting you to danger. Again, putting a person in control is really, really important when you're trying to unpair associations. So they're the ones that choose, not us. Like, yeah, every time I eat broccoli, I just get this memory. Okay, let's do it. And so then unpair all the unhelpful associations. There's one thing I do like to tell people, that your younger you just couldn't possibly know what you know now. So if you're I don't care if you're working with a 4-year-old who was traumatized at 2, or a 70-year-old that was traumatized when they were 20. You were younger when this happened, and you didn't, until you had this experience, you didn't know yet what to do. So forgiveness, self-forgiveness. So what did you already have? This is an example as an adult diagnosed with complex PTSD. This comes from our groups. I was given permission to share these. I had no clue that my protective factors were at work as a child and throughout adulthood. Interesting. So what you can do is, with groups, you just schedule one of those protective factors a week to discuss. Some need to, especially spirituality, because we'll talk one week maybe about how spirituality was used. There's spiritual abuse that does happen. If you want to read about that, go to Victor V's work, really excellent work. But what you want to do is just schedule 2 for things like spirituality, where one might be the abuse, and then the next one is their own spirituality and how to reclaim that. Reclaiming prayer, reclaiming meditation, whatever that is for them. And then what you do in individual work is you lead with their best protective factor. And then here's an example that came out of one group. They said, my sister really meant it when she said, I love you all those times. And I always give a tribute to my big sister because we love each other. So what can you bring into this paired association? You have this paired association. What can you bring into it? What this woman says, she goes, I pulled from the lessons taught to me about unpairing association so I can work sometimes quickly through a trigger safely and eventually calmly. I don't have time today, but you can usually do this in one session for those of you who are practitioners, mental health practitioners. This is one that's just really, really quick. It was a kid who used to get locked in their room a lot. And there was one time that they had been injured before being locked in their room. And that memory was very, very scary. And they realized that they hadn't realized before, but they had a sister that was in that room with them. And they had a protective factor, and it helped them to heal from that trauma. They remembered what that sister said. They remembered, but they had forgotten it before until they started thinking about who else might be in the room. This is my favorite one to always end on. We call it the lamppost. I've gotten permission to give you this one as well. This is someone who was visiting a grandparent in a northeastern huge city up north, and they went out late at night and they decided to get food. And as they were coming back from getting food, it was just a group of cousins and brothers that every summer they went out there, and they saw this person standing under a lamppost whose face was all messed up. They were yelling at them in two different languages, one of which they didn't know what it was, and they had a baseball bat. And just as that person put their hand behind their back, they all ran. So what happened is they realized, here's this person now with a college degree, was a college athlete, they'd work out. And every time they went under lampposts, they got this like anxious feeling. And we realized that it was this paired association. So what we did for this person is we had them imagine the person who loves them the most. And that was grandma. And we put their grandma under the lamppost in their memory. We did the mindfulness first. We took two associations that were there, the grandparent and the lamppost, and we replaced the negative with the positive. And through calmness, you asked, like, how did you know that your grandma loves you? What can you tell? And by doing that, they completely calmed down and were able to start jogging the very next week. So here's some ideas. Basically, for self-value, what makes you strong inside? How do you keep getting up and going each morning? Self-regulation, we all get stressed. Just find a quiet place to calm down, breathe and relax. If you recognize, if you're down, up, if you're heightened, go down. Set one goal every week to learn something new or practice a skill you want to improve. And these can be protective factors. We do that at the end of every single session in every group I ever run. Connect to a family member. Make sure it's like online, there's so many ways to connect. Invite them. I've had phones in my sessions before. Invite them to come if they're safe. Interactive and online gaming. Zoom a friend who lives far away. Reach out to those second level friends and groups. I really like to talk about that one because we really missed them during COVID. Those the person who bagged your groceries at the store that you said hi to, and they're like, hey, Machelle, I'm like, I didn't get to see her. And those people, you don't realize how much those affirmations, remember, go back to practitioners, how much we need those. And so reach back out to those. Here's spirituality, make time for mindfulness each day. We talked about that. Yoga, connect with your faith leaders, call someone to pray with. Or bring somebody in a deep breathing and mentalizing success. I accidentally clicked beyond, sorry. Mentalizing success is a really good way to help someone sit there and imagine themselves. If you were successful in this situation that's giving you a difficulty or reminding you of this trauma, what would that look like? Now see yourself doing that. Now give me one way you're going to get through that. Academics, learn something new, anything. We already talked about, is it knitting? Maybe. Reach out to the teacher. Thank them as we reopen these schools. Boy, our teachers, I know a lot who have stopped and many who have changed schools. I have lots of teachers in my family, lots and lots of teachers in my family. It's something that we love, and it's been rough. So reach out and thank them. Try walking, writing, drawing, music, art collaborations, sports. Community, find online communities are really good. Find positive performing, gaming, gardening, book clubs, anything you can do. My Beauty and the Beast costume right outside the door. During the question and answer, I might bring you something I'm proud of to see. But anyway, so basically, I'm going to end with this quote. I've learned about hope, and it's how it's okay to have good days and bad days. My bad days are becoming just a little easier. I'm becoming a little more resilient. to work through using these protective factors and techniques I've learned. As I sit in the room weekly with other women, I find hope for the future of the younger people being properly diagnosed and given the tools not only to survive, but hopefully we will thrive. Everyone we work with and ourselves as well. Thank you for letting me come today. These are just all the people that I love, and thank you.